At only 19 years old, Bailey Moody had taken her athletic career to nearly the peak of sports, having made the podium and winning a bronze in wheelchair basketball at the Paralympics in Tokyo. With the Games in Paris 2024 just around the corner, Moody has become a rising star and an integral player on a fairly young U.S. squad. Welcome, Bailey.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Hey, Bailey, it's you have a pretty great story. There's a ton of information out there about you. And I want to jump into your basketball career. But, first off, boy, I was 19 when I was hurt, which is, substantially older than finding out at 10 years old that you have cancer. I mean, geez, that's like the one word that scares the heck out of just about anybody. But you and your family, it sounds like you guys took it pretty straight on and handled it in a pretty pragmatic way. Would you say that?
My family kind of handles all of our things that we're going to tackle in that way. My parents are both heavy seekers of knowledge and research, and are really like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to jump into it. And so that's kind of how we tackle everything. But yeah, I think we definitely faced it head on, and we were ready and we were prepared. We obviously had an idea of how hard it would be, but the whole goal was to get me healthy again. And so that's what we did.
Well, part of being healthy is also getting back into the things that you love, which you did right away. And astonishingly, one of the very first questions you asked was, will I be able to play sports again? I mean, wow, what a bold place to go at only 10 years old. How do you reach that level of maturity at only 10?
It's, I think being a kid is both easily straightforward and also a kind of naivety to that. Obviously, I was old enough to understand what was happening, but also not old enough to understand the permanence and magnitude of what was happening, sort of. Like, to me, old people got cancer, and that was it. And so I didn't really know what I was walking into, but I did know that it was scary and dangerous, and I did know that it could be something that took me out of athletics forever. And so, my whole goal through getting through cancer was to go back to basketball and to play basketball again. And I guess maybe as a kid, that's like the only thing I was focusing on. But at the same time, like, kids are very resilient, and I wanted to fight through for that.
So, Bailey, you had the heart of a jock. I mean, it seems like you always had that from everything that I've read about you. I mean, that's what you've lived a lot of your life around, which is, unbelievably great. But, so you were a BK, below the knee amputee. So naturally, getting a prosthetic, you wanted to get back into basketball, but you found yourself in a way, lagging behind because you just couldn't do the things that you were able to do. Suddenly, here comes this thing that you never really even had to use in life, a wheelchair, and that totally frees you up to become one of the best wheelchair basketball players in the world. So talk about that transition where you went from, being the able-bodied, running, walking on your legs basketball player to wheelchair basketball, and how that worked for you.
Yeah, so I'm not a traditional below-the-knee amputee. I had a rare form of amputation called a rotationplasty, which basically is a leg reconfiguration because my knee was where the cancer was, and so they had to take my knee from me. So they basically flipped my foot around and turned my ankle.
So you lost the hinge. Yeah.
Well, kind of. And then they turned my ankle joint into my knee joint, basically. So they rotated my foot 180 degrees and reattached it. So I wear a prosthesis on the end of my leg, and then my backwards foot kind of functions as a knee joint in a way. So I have greater function than an above the knee amputee, but less function than a below the knee amputee. So with that comes, a natural knee joint that, you don't have to use an artificial one, but also there's less range of motion there. So as I was playing middle school sports, I was keeping up for a point in time. I was playing basketball with my middle school team, and I was playing volleyball with my middle school team, and I was keeping up fine in volleyball. But basketball started to become a little more difficult because, yes, I was such a hard worker and getting so much better so quickly, but at some point there's this gap that starts to form between people with two legs and people with one.
No
And
doubt.
it was just so much work to get up and down the court. And so it's not that I had a hard time kind of transitioning to wheelchair basketball, even though my parents did a lot of, again, scouting out people, trying to figure out as much information as they could about why I should do this and the opportunities that are presented with it. And I had a hard time initially being like, well, I don't need this chair for my everyday life. But, getting in it to play a sport was kind of that transition that needed to be made. But that kind of levels the playing field again and brings this opportunity to travel the world, play in college, play in the Paralympics, and do all these things that I really couldn't have done if I had kept playing able-bodied athletics. And
no doubt about it. And I don't mean to jump in on you, but I want to talk about your life as a wheelchair basketball player. I mean, because it's really pretty fascinating how quickly you rose up through the ranks. At only 19 years old, you end up going to the Paralympics and taking home a bronze medal. That had to be just kind of, stupefying all on its own to, be so young and suddenly you're thrust into an international environment playing basketball. What was that like?
Everything that I could have imagined and everything that I couldn't have imagined rolled up into one. It was an experience that I just wanted to soak everything up and just was so thankful that, after everything that I went through, that I was there and that I was getting to do this and getting to play basketball in another country against other teams, like really getting the experience of a lifetime that really not a lot of people get to do. And even though it was during COVID and it was all kind of crazy, the experience nonetheless was just, for my 19-year-old self, I was just so in awe the whole time of being there and tried to soak everything up.
It must have been nearly outer body to a degree, huh?
It was crazy. Just going into the venues for the first time, getting all those experiences, getting all the gear for the first time, every single thing. All the older players were like, they just wanted to watch us experience it for the first time. And it was just fun that they were excited for us too.
Okay. Hey, Bailey, I want to jump into, you specifically as a wheelchair basketball player. So you're classification 4.0. The only thing higher or more mobile on the floor would be a 4.5. So being of that classification, you have a lot of responsibility on the floor to handle the ball. What would you say is your style of play, and what role on the floor are you most comfortable with now that you're at that ripe old age of like 22 years old?
So I'm 21 years old, but I have about 4 or 5 years of international experience under my belt of just me trying to figure out what I'm doing because of how quickly I was thrown into everything. I'm a very fast player. I like to play guns a-blazing, literally just like to push as fast as I can all the time, which is not always the best thing to do, but it's how I like the game to go. I don't like to have to think, so the faster that it's moving, the less I have to think about it. And I'm a really quick player. So a lot of my game is pushing the pace of the game, pushing the pace in transitions, just creating
so would you then say that you're a very instinctual player, or it's not having to say overthink it out on the floor?
I think maybe I play much better. I think this is true of a lot of athletes, but I play much better when I'm not in my head and I'm not thinking about what I'm doing and I'm just playing and doing what I have practiced so many times over and over and over again. But I have a nice looking shot. I have a really quick first push, and it gets me going really quickly, which I think is a good asset as well to the teams that I play on.
There's absolutely no shame in a bronze medal. I would love to have had one myself. but you have to be setting your sights even higher as you look forward. I looked back at the Paralympics, going back to '88, the first official Paralympics, and the U.S. has won a number of. I think they've won 4 gold medals dating back to that time. Do you feel a substantial responsibility now that you're starting to mature and become one of the more forefront players to, maybe be a catalyst and jumpstart the United States back into the gold medal round?
I definitely think that having a whole Paralympic cycle under my belt is what has helped me to get to this point and now become sort of more of a veteran player than the rookie that I was for those first 4 years. So yeah, I think that I am now in this section of the team where I'm a huge contributing part. And a lot of us there's several of us that were so young in the first few years of this cycle.
All right. So Bailey, talking a little bit about the team and the youth, you also had a little bit of veteran power in there too, even some star power. Natalie Schneider at 37, she's a 4-time Paralympian. Darlene Hunter, 3-time Paralympian. Rose Hollerman, a 3-time Paralympian. Even with the youth, you guys still were very successful. What do you think that veteran leadership did to help you bring your game up?
They were huge in being patient with us and coaching us on the court and teaching us, they've had so many Paralympic experiences under their belt and so many international experiences. So to have them kind of leading us through it was incredible. And also they were the ones that were excited to let us experience some of those things for the first time, and just watching them watch us just like have those experiences and do those things, and them being so excited for us too. It was just incredible to have them on the team as well and have them leading us, and also just kind of coaching us up to be able to do that eventually for ourselves too.
In keeping with, playing the game on the highest level, I noticed that you're going to school at the University of Alabama, you're majoring in psychology, and you hope to one day work as a sports psychologist. How do you think working with a sports psychologist helps to elevate the game for people who play at the highest level like yourself?
I think that sports, the mental side of the game, I like to see it as, the physical side is super important. It takes up a very good chunk of your game. But the mental side also takes up a huge chunk, because if you're not there mentally, then you're not going to be able to perform on the court. Whether that's because you're in your head, whether that's because there's things going on off the court. So I think that sports psychology is both an emerging field, but also something that's super important, especially as you move up in the levels and you're continuously expected to perform consistently. So if I don't know, since that's so interesting to me, and since I've had a lot of experience with working with sports psychologists and getting to hear from them, and how much I love just to interact with people and talk to people, it's a field that I find would fit me really well. And also something that's needed amongst a lot of teams.
Just kind of lastly too, Bailey, I found it to be a really great compliment that, Degree has taken on, a disabled athlete, that being you, and their Breaking Limits program, which is, basically licensing your name, image, and likeness. What kind of honor was that for you?
It was such an honor. I love that people are starting to, and companies, and, we see this with Toyota as well, but they're starting to recognize Paralympic sports as something that needs to be shown to the world as well, and that needs to be seen as equivalent to Olympic sports, especially, and then when you bring that down to the college level too, the fact that they're, lumping wheelchair basketball and adapted athletics into other athletic programs and seeing us as athletes too is a huge step in getting, these sports out there and bringing awareness to it. So if I can be a step in that process, then that's what I want to be and want to try and do.
Well, undoubtedly, we had spoken a lot at length with Darlene Hunter about that, and having more universities, significant universities, adopt and bring in, adaptive programs. And it seems to be a really pretty fabulous stepping stone.
It definitely is. And we've made so many strides. And there's still a long way for us to go, but looking at, where we were 10 years ago, it's huge. So if we can just keep moving in that direction.
Well, she's already got a bronze medal, and I know you got your sights set on more. Thank you very much for joining us, Bailey.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been good talking to you.
You bet.